On the front lines, Luminous swept her gaze across the immensity of the battlefield, a vast theater of destruction where every movement, every scream decided the fate of all humanity. A precarious balance between survival and total annihilation. A defeat here would mark not only the end of the fighting, but the pure and simple extinction of any form of future, pushing the warriors to draw upon their very last strength, transforming their fear into a collective fury that illuminated the surrounding chaos. She then encouraged all the fighters through a telepathic transmission, reminding them that even without limbs or with their magical reserves exhausted, they must not retreat, but instead feel honored to discover a profound meaning to their existence in this critical moment. Soon, a strange, feverish heat enveloped the terrain, amplifying the tension as if the very atmosphere were boiling with palpable energy. To the north, Lewis, Gunther, Adelman, Gadra, and their allies struggled against Habataki, sowing disorder with unpredictable attacks that defied all anticipation. These enemies were so vicious that surviving their first offensive bordered on a miracle. But the arrival of Mai Faruqi changed everything, opening avenues for counterattacks that restored hope within this vortex of confusion. To the west, Shion and her group faced Kakeyashi. Sare and Gregory, who had been forced to flee earlier, surpassed themselves despite their grumbling, contributing relentlessly to the defensive line. Sare in particular maintained the holy field at the same time, a vital barrier whose fall would mean absolute disaster. He fully understood the stakes, and the weight on his shoulders must have been crushing, an invisible stress gnawing at him from within. The giants, once natural enemies of Luminous and forming the core of the giant chained gods, had become solid and imposing allies. Alongside other illustrious fighters, they gradually eroded the enemy ranks, cutting through the opposition with a perseverance that turned chaos into a measured progression. To the south, Ultima reigned supreme against Swim, that starborn fish who could not match her relentless fury. Luminous herself marveled at this expected yet impressive performance, inwardly admitting that the other forces were nothing more than secondary support. And yet, they cooperated harmoniously, eliminating the bizarre cryptids that emerged again and again so as not to hinder Ultima, a crucial mission that kept the front stable despite its apparent simplicity. Then the reinforcements under Benimaru's command surged forth, injecting new momentum into the battle. As these divine monsters from another world fell one after another, the tide seemed to turn, shifting from imminent threat to growing advantage, reinvigorating the exhausted troops. Yet on the eastern flank, Everage, the destruction dragon, remained motionless, a chilling silence that instilled a creeping horror. Luminous's ultrasense had blared maximum alert from the very beginning, an incessant warning vibrating through her being. But suddenly, nothing. An absolute void that swallowed everything. Luminous wondered if the time for vigilance had passed, interpreting this deceptive calm with perfect clarity. All sounds on the battlefield faded away, leaving behind an oppressive silence soon broken by an evil laugh. Innocent on the surface, yet tainted with a childlike darkness that chilled the bones. The balance of the battlefield still held, miraculously thanks to the massive resurrection performed through Luminous's holy magic, and especially because Ivorage, the evil dragon of death, remained motionless. But everyone felt that this fragile status quo could collapse at any moment. If she moved, nothing would prevent total ruin. The King Gazelle approached Luminous, his expression grave. "Demon Lord Luminous, are we going all out? Do we deploy all guerrilla units on Ivorage?" Luminous grimaced. A low growl escaped her. Sending everything now would doom another front to collapse with no chance of recovery. But letting things continue like this meant the East would fall for sure. No time to think. And that's when the worst happened. Ivorage's aura flickered. "Wait, her appearance? It's changing!" someone shouted. No one even bothered wondering whether her power was increasing. They had never been able to measure it anyway. Slowly, the monstrous silhouette descended toward the ground, and when the light faded, a woman of unreal beauty stood there. Gazelle muttered, "A beauty like that. Do you know her?" Luminous remained silent. The face was unfamiliar, yet the resemblance struck like a knife. It was Milim, a grown Milim, exalted, terrifying. On the ground, Masayuki was the first to break. "Lucia!" The cry escaped him against his will. It wasn't him speaking, it was the dormant hero inside him. Emperor Rudra, who had just recognized his little sister missing for millennia. Masayuki, panicking, wondered who this Lucia could possibly be. And the memories surged instantly. He understood immediately the situation had just turned nightmarish. At the same moment, the three cryptid generals completed their metamorphosis. A power so insane that even Velgrind, unable to read their limits, was left speechless. And as if that weren't enough, the corpse of Jahaile, abandoned on the ground, began to move in a repulsive manner. High above in the sky, invisible to all, a presence observed the scene with a cold smile. My wife has returned. My daughter will arrive soon. This time the family will be reunited. I will not choose wrong ever again. Only the worthy will survive. No one on the battlefield heard that cruel voice. Meanwhile, in Eurazenia, Velzard, deprived of Twilight Valentine, had completely lost her sanity. She transformed into her ultimate form as a true dragon, the most powerful of all draconic species. Facing her, Guy Crimson at the front line, Carrera and Rain on the flanks, Testarossa in full support. None of them trembled. Why? Because Testarossa had just delivered the news that changed everything. Lord Rimuru has returned. Guy immediately snickered. Oh yeah? When that bastard shows up, tell him to come give me a hand right away. Testarossa answered calmly. Even without your request, Lord Rimuru already has his plan. But first, we must bring Milim-sama back to herself. On the Eurazania front, the battlefield looked like a frozen hell. Velzard, completely out of control, unleashed waves of holy destruction that could have erased entire countries in mere seconds. And yet, no one panicked. Carrera, still steaming from having been turned into an ice sculpture moments earlier, hadn't lost a single shred of her legendary rage. Her consciousness had remained intact. Even while she had been trapped in the ice, and the instant she broke free, she had immediately charged her daily ultimate skill, Judgment Bullet. A bullet capable of erasing any god. She had aimed and fired, and the projectile would have bounced off pitifully if Testarossa hadn't, in a fraction of a second, deployed the void like an invisible blade to carve a perfect corridor through Velzard's impenetrable defensive field. The shot passed, it hit. And even then, Velzard had taken only a scratch. Carrera still screamed her blind faith. Lord Rimuru's judgment is perfect, I'm telling you. No matter why he disappeared, I trust him 100%. Rain, on the opposite end, embodied absolute caution. She dodged, harassed, diverted attention, but above all, she calculated. Guy-sama, seriously, why burn ourselves out now? We hold the line, we avoid fatal hits, we wait for Rimuru-sama to arrive, and then we switch to easy mode. The evacuation is almost done. Misery, Moss, and Esprit will show up any second. She talked about the subordinates of others as if they were her own pieces on a board. Typical Rain, always searching for the most profitable path. And at the center of this absolute chaos, Guy Crimson. Guy was doing something completely insane. Every time Velzard unleashed a storm of absolute ice or an explosion capable of blowing countries off the map, he countered it with Void. He had copied Testarossa's perfect mastery of Void just by watching her perform it. Testarossa, who already struggled to maintain her own Void continuously, clenched her teeth in frustration as she watched Guy use the same technique with insulting ease. But Guy wasn't showing off. He wanted to do something far more dangerous. Detach his astral body and dive directly into Velzard's mind to reconnect her to her senses. It was the only way to stop her without killing her. Problem. During that time, his physical body would be completely vulnerable against an enraged Velzard. Even with Testarossa, Carrera, and Rain around him, it was guaranteed suicide. Testarossa, while blocking another wave with her own Void, shouted over the roar of destruction. Guy, can you really bring her back to herself? Guy, between two openings of black emptiness, replied without hesitation. Yes, but not if I have to fight at the same time. It was the raw truth. He had already given everything just to stay alive. Testarossa grimaced. She herself was at the limit of her strength, trying to maintain Void continuously. Diving into Velzard's mind? Impossible. She would be annihilated instantly. Carrera, on her side, was yelling in frustration. My normal attacks don't even scratch her. Besides Judgment Bullet, nothing gets through. She's too damn tough, it's infuriating. She was right. Killing Velzard wasn't the goal. Bringing her back to reason was. And for that, they were stuck. Rain, meanwhile, was almost secretly delighted. Wait for Rimuru-sama? That was the perfect plan. 0 unnecessary risks, everyone stays alive, and as soon as Rimuru arrives, it's game over for the problem. To her, Rimuru-sama plus Guy meant nothing was impossible. Why waste extra effort? Guy and Testarossa exchanged a glance in the middle of the chaos. No words needed. They made the same decision at the exact same moment. We wait for Rimuru-sama. Carrera grumbled but agreed. Rain displayed a thinly veiled, victorious smile. The choice was sealed. They were going to hold out, no matter the cost, because Rimuru was returning. And suddenly, in the middle of this frozen chaos, a casual voice crossed the battlefield as if nothing unusual was happening. Well, I'm a little late, sorry. Glad to see you're all still in one piece. Rimuru was there. In the blink of an eye, the entire atmosphere flipped. Shoulders loosened, faces lit up, even in the heart of hell itself. He had used instant movement to teleport directly here, and the first thing he saw was Velzard, in full true dragon form, ravaging everything around her without any restraint. Testarossa and Guy, at their limits, were still holding the line thanks to Void. Each time Velzard unleashed a wave of absolute ice or a holy explosion, one of them neutralized the attack. Without them, there would have been no one left to save. Rimuru grimaced. First mission, calm Velzard. Second mission, convince her to join our side. The cause of this carnage? Carrera's judgment bullet, obviously. It's not my fault, okay? Really not my fault. Guy, half dead from exhaustion, glared at him. Stop making excuses and get to work, damn it. Rimuru raised his hands in a calming gesture. Yeah, I'm coming, no need to get worked up. Diablo, just behind him, was already casting murderous looks at Guy, ready to pounce. Rimuru signaled him to calm down and quickly swept his gaze across the battlefield. The ice statues had all been freed. Corion, Frey, Midray, and their troops were retreating at full speed, but Velzard's radius of action was so gigantic that they couldn't even reach a safe zone. At a reasonable distance, a huge protective barrier dome shone faintly. At the center, Sokka. Around it, Moss and Misery holding the barrier up with everything they had, backed by Gerudo and his forces. Every attack that Guy and Testarossa couldn't completely neutralize was deflected or dampened by that shield. Without them, the losses would have been catastrophic. Rimuru mentally noted to congratulate Moss later. The guy was handling things like a boss. Inside the barrier, Gabiru, Esprit, and Obera. The freeing of the ice statues, that was them. Gabiru had activated his ultimate gift, Moodmaker, Esprit his psychological king, and Obera had burned her single daily use of Fate Modification to cancel Velzard's massive freezing effect. A completely insane combo, but it had worked. Result, everyone was alive. Rimuru blinked. Wait. Why were Gabiru and Sophia holding hands and blushing? And why was Sophia giggling like a teenager? No, seriously. He swore to himself that he would have a very serious talk with Gabiru later. A very serious one. Obera, for her part, was spent. Pale face, magic nearly at 0. She was still standing only thanks to the energy Gabiru kept transferring to her continuously, but she gritted her teeth, eyes always on the alert. A true warrior. Milium had been right. She was a subordinate of gold. Esprit, meanwhile, was doing the job without any particular flashiness. Logistical support, energy transfer, small local barriers. Nothing spectacular, but indispensable. Rimuru took a deep breath. Okay, no time to waste. Velzard first, then the rest of the world.